It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, December 26th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content. It is honestly still recovering from the madness that was that Flyers versus Red Wings game.
That was crazy.
We are going to get into that, plus a Phantoms Tuesday report and our Nemesis of the week.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on social media, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. You can find us over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. You'll get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, it's a muse day, as you do on holiday weekends where you have to combine Monday and Tuesday things.
Yeah.
Honestly, still not entirely sure what happened in that game against the Red Wings. But I do think there's two major things we have to talk about. We'll talk about the comeback aspect of it. But obviously number one on the list, Carter Hart's return. What do you think about his play in that game?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't terrible. It was just, look, when you're off for 13 days, it's going to be hard to look sharp. So he was never going to look sharp in this game. Maybe gave up a few more than I thought he would give up. But, overall, I don't know how he could have done well. Was there really a scenario out there where he could have done well? Because, look, if I'm going to tell you in the heart of hearts, I still, no pun intended, I still think he came back too soon. I don't think he's fully recovered from whatever he's recovered from. I still think he looks a little off. But he wants to play. They want to play him. Okay. But I just think, maybe a couple more days off, even though that would make him rustier, would still make him stronger physically.
Yeah, I think, you look at that first period, right? Where, to be fair, not all of those Red Wings goals were his fault. There was definitely some circumstances around it. But I think, he was just getting his sea legs back out there at the same time as the Flyers were lethargic. And I think that was the bad combination there, that it really wasn't entirely his
the
fault.
Red Wings have enough veterans, like with Kane and otherwise. Kane got a prayer, goes right on his stick. That's going to happen. But what I think they noticed was, oh, look, we're a lot faster than these guys. So they stung them early. And that, that held up for a little while. But again, the Red Wings don't have great defense either.
No.
So, eventually the Flyers got back in the game because they do come back. And so, that part of it was okay. But I think, it's like anything else. These guys are playing really, really hard. But there is a limit to what you can push them. Now, granted, maybe the break came at the right time, and we'll see. But this is sort of what I'm still worried about. You're pushing them really hard. They're playing to their best of their ability. And at some point, they're going to start to sag a little bit.
Well, I think there's a point to be made there for slightly different reasons. And I think, that's a lot of what we're going to talk
'Cause I
about
got
on
a
the
lot
show
of
later.
texts about it. When they looked lethargic in the first period, wow. People were, sending me messages, sending me all kinds of stuff.
Sure, but I do think that's kind of related to the cycle of the NHL calendar, which is
Yeah.
something we're going to start talking about later this week when we talk about the road trip and what, the second 2/3 or half to 2/3 of the season are going to look like for the Flyers, given how the season generally works. But, in this game in particular, I do think the travel affected them and it took them a while to get going in this game. And you're right, Detroit just kind of took advantage of it. But I do think as the game progressed, so went the Flyers, so went Carter Hart in terms of
Mhm.
him getting sharper. And
Yeah.
my God, that overtime was just you want that goal back that allowed Detroit to tie it up 6-6,
Yeah.
but Carter Hart also played incredibly in the overtime where they were just getting hammered.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of discussion. We had one on off the post. That RVH discipline that goalies like to use, Carter Hart uses it religiously, and he was setting up for that, and Larkin knew it. So that's why it doesn't even look like Larkin's shooting for anything. Nothing's open, but he knows what Carter Hart's going to do, and that discipline, and that's why it goes in. And so, like, maybe if you're covering that game, you're not thinking about it that minute. We had a day to think about it, and so that was just a really smart play. Like, that's really what it was. It wasn't like a prayer of a shot. It was a smart shot.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely part of the, cycle that happens in hockey
Yeah,
where goalies develop new techniques, shooters figure it out, goalies develop new techniques,
yeah,
and it just keeps going around and
yeah,
around. And so we could be seeing, new innovations related to that technique that Carter Hart uses. And so that's something to keep an eye on just league wide, I think,
yeah.
in terms of how shooters approach things versus goalies like Carter Hart, and can goalies like Carter Hart adjust their game a little bit to counteract it? As far as some other guys in the game, as part of that comeback effort, man, Travis Sanheim, two excellent shots that allowed for tip in goals up front.
Yeah.
I just think he was really heads up and a huge part of that effort.
He was. There's no question he was heads up. Uh, the offense was really kicked in, and that was good. They needed it to be able to come back. That was one where they showed they have a certain amount of offense in their game for sure, but it also showed that, yeah, their top pairing probably has played harder and more than they've ever played in their entire careers, and it's showing a little bit. And so that's the give and take of that.
Yeah, I agree, and I also think that that was a game that Scott Lawton needed a
Mhm.
goal and an assist, and man, I have just almost never seen him that excited
Yeah,
after
it
he
was
scored
nice to
that
see him
goal.
rewarded for sure.
Yeah, but I thought his assist was really spot on as well. I think
Yeah,
that whole rush was really well designed. So, and he doesn't get that many opportunities to do
no,
that. I think, he lives for the penalty kill when he has Travis Konechny to
right.
work with on that front. And I think that, it just goes to show that when he's in the right environment with the right people, like he can make things happen.
Yeah, no question. I mean, he has really good offensive instincts. He's never going to be a star offensively, but he can make some things happen out there.
Yeah, I also thought that Joel Farabee had an excellent game, and his IQ and playmaking is getting better and better as he goes along. I really think I thought his pass to Bobby Brink for that lone goal the Flyers had at the beginning
Yeah.
was really good.
And Brink lucked out too because he fanned on it, but it went in.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, we all know that he fanned on it because he wanted
right.
to do
But
something else with the puck, but he really fooled Reimer on that. He did.
well, I don't know. That doesn't take much to do, in
No,
my
it doesn't.
opinion.
It doesn't.
But, just that little move that Farabee made to set up the
Yes.
play was
Well,
was
listen,
was remarkable.
he's always had that in this game. I think, unfortunately, when Torts sort of beats on him a little for not being good defensively or something, that he sort of pulls back and doesn't do enough of that. He's got that in him. That's always been in him. But I think he's had to scale it back so he could be better all around.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, and we obviously have to talk about Nick Seeler and
Yeah.
that bout. I had been thinking, the way we've been talking about Nick Seeler, he's been really great on that second pairing, and him
Mhm.
and Walker play really well. And he hasn't had to resort to those kinds of things in a while. And
True.
so to see him explode like that was absolutely nuts. But in a lot of ways, I think it did help the Flyers get the energy back that they needed. And most of the time, fights don't do that,
Yeah.
but I just really think they were so far behind and there was nothing left to lose that it really did help the team in this
No, I
instance.
think this one did help. I know a lot of times in our um, on YouTube in the comments. People will kill me because I'm not a big like to fight guy because I don't think
Me neither.
it helps. But I seem to take the brunt of it because it's like I have a negative spin on it a lot of times. But this was one where it wasn't staged, and I think it did
Yep.
help. But a lot of
Yep.
times I'm at games and I'll watch for the next few minutes after one, and they don't help. But this one did.
Yeah, and he was exceedingly not pleased in
No,
the penalty
no, he
with
wasn't.
how the calls came out in the
Yeah.
wash, which, to be fair, I think he was right to some degree. But,
Well, the
um,
refs were on some sort of crackdown because even
yeah,
recently in the Buffalo Ranger game, Eric Johnson got an instigator called on him, and he went crazy. He took like 2 steps out of the penalty box after he was in it already.
yeah,
So, like, they're not used to players are not used to having this and I'm not saying because of this. I'm just saying this is an in general NHL thing now. But players aren't used to having the instigator called on them, and it's all of a sudden, and we hadn't really seen it called that much, and now all of a sudden this year it's getting called a lot. So I think the Flyers got to be careful of that because they're a kind of team that plays on the edge that could have those calls. I think they did have one call, an instigator called on them already this year. I remember one.
yeah, yeah. Well, Flyers are now on a break. We won't see them again in action until Thursday. Flyers have also had a lot of extra time games. The Phantoms decided to follow suit and had two of their own this past week. We will talk about them coming up next.
As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers Stay Hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. And if you're thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. This next game with coming up on New Year's Eve day, it's always complicated. Uh, with the Eagles and the Arizona Cardinals, I would go with the over. I don't think either defense is ready for the other, and I think it's going to be a high scoring affair. So take that for what it is. So visit fanduel.com/locked on and get into the action this NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Tomorrow on the show, we are going to talk about the Flyers' upcoming Western road trip and what the goals for the team should be over the course of that trip. We'll also be answering your mailbag questions, so get them in lockedonflyers at Gmail. You can contact us on Twitter or comment over on YouTube. A little condensed Phantoms Tuesday again with this Muse Day show here, but a split results in Charlotte against the Checkers. They had an overtime win and a shootout loss, so there was that extra time. So they didn't really gain or lose anything in the division. Still in seventh. Um, I think that they're just this bifurcated team that we talked about last week where they're not really finding ways to win these games, but the prospects are developing well. And so it's hard to really evaluate who and what this team is.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, we've talked about Tuomaala. We'll continue to talk about him. He's doing great. There's definitely some other guys doing well. They have good goaltending. We've talked about that. But they're taking like 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They can't seem to get on a roll. And if they really want to get the best development and the best kind of experience, they need to sort of figure out how to get on a roll. They just can't do it. It's hard for them to keep momentum going.
Yeah, it really is. And it's kind of baffling, but they just have to figure out a way to integrate the prospects with the AHL guys in a way that gets them wins. And
That's the
I
issue.
think, yeah, it's just the issue that there isn't like solid consistency for this team the way it's structured right now. And so I think they have to take a hard look at themselves and figure out the best way to put out this personnel to get a little bit more success in the points column. But in the meantime, one of the things that we had talked about a few weeks back was potentially splitting up the top line for the Phantoms that had been Tuomaala, Lycksell, and Laczynski. And with Lazinski's injury, Olle Lycksell getting called up, that kind of happened naturally. Tuomaala got to shine on his own last week. Lazinski came back from his injury. Now Lycksell's back from the Flyers. They did not put them back together. They kept Tuomaala separate on a line with J.R. Avon and Elliot Desnoyers. And I could not have been happier with that decision because it kept Tuomaala in a position where he could be the guy on his
Right.
line to a degree because Desnoyers just isn't playing up to what he was last year. But
He's
Avon,
not been very good at all, really.
no. And so, but Avon is getting better and better and
Yeah,
better as
Avon's
this
really
season.
good. Avon's a guy that,
Yeah.
I think our Flyers fans are really going to be surprised when they see his points and what his production is at the end of the year.
Yeah, and then you got to put them all together, like, for the power play unit, right? But you keep them separate on their regular 5-on-5 shifts. I really think, honestly, that was super smart by the coaches to do it that way.
What's not super smart is, again, playing Gendron 1 out of 2 games and putting him on the fourth line. Like, that's an afterthought. Why?
Yeah, well, that's the balance issue that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, but
And
here's the thing. I get that Cooper Marody scores more points at the AHL level, but you could put him on the fourth line on a game that Gendron's going to play, and it's not going to hurt him. He knows how to deal with it. He'll be fine. But Gendron then will play with a higher level of talent than, Jordy Bellerive and Goucher.
yeah, the problem is
That's the
I
problem.
see what they're doing though, because so Tuamala is now tied with Marody for the points lead on the team. They both have 28 points. And so they feel like they have to give Marody more minutes in order to win, ostensibly, but it's not quite playing out that way in actuality. But Marody is still being very successful. So I think they
Don't you think he'd be successful on any line you put him on?
absolutely, but I'm thinking from their perspective of why they're doing
I
it,
know,
and
but what do
it's
you like? I didn't look at the amount of minutes that Gendron got, but on that fourth line, what did he get? 8 minutes? Like, what could they expect out of him? They want goals out of him. Ian LePerrier said, when you play, you got to score. Well, how's he going to score that way?
no, I mean, I think that's fair. It's just like I'm just trying to see
Yeah,
why they're doing what they're doing from their perspective. But in the meantime, Tanner Laczynski is looking a lot better, coming back from the injury this time around, and so he's like back in the number 3 slot points wise for the team. And I think he had a really good weekend. Lots of really good scoring opportunities. I say weekend, but it was really 2 weekdays. But
yeah, and
we
also
talk
just
about
to
it.
be fair, Marody could stay on the top line. You could take Garrett Wilson off the top line too, put him on the fourth.
Well, that is the other issue.
That's another. You could do that too if you really want to keep Marody. Because I thought about it, fine. Because Marody could play either side, but you want to keep Marody and take out
Yeah.
Wilson and put Gendron in there. That's probably better.
Well, yeah. And what's interesting is that when they sent Rick Gardner up to the Flyers to sit in the press box, that meant they had to shift some stuff around. So they moved Wade Allison up to the top line
Right.
with Lazinski and Lycksell, and then slotted Marody in with Garrett Wilson and added Adam Brooks to that line. And so that kind of made more sense in the big picture because you want Allison up with skilled players because he actually has been improving as well. And I think it puts him in a better position. Now, Wade Allison had a weird couple of games. I think he played really well, a lot of good scoring chances. He scored on Friday on a really nice breakaway. And he also got the only shootout goal in that shootout loss that they had. But then he also took a 10-minute misconduct on Thursday as well. So although I think the AHL referees may have gotten that message too, because there was like multiple misconducts in
Yeah.
that game.
It
Like
does seem like
Belpedio
they're
got one too.
they're trying to crack down.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that was part of it as well. I don't think either coach was happy with the officiating in those 2 games, to
Yeah.
be honest. But, yeah, just the way they're trying to move puzzle pieces around, like, I think that they're having some good thoughts, but it just hasn't come through fully yet.
I mean, we're at a point in the year where it should. Like, that's it. It just should. But there's some
Yeah.
combos that are working very well. Lycksell and Lazinski, yeah, they're not going to break that up. That's fine. And there's some other combos too that are pretty good, but they can't seem to put it together. They can't seem to, uh, again, like this is another one. Like last weekend, you said Zade Wisdom played twice. This time he plays once. Um, they don't want to sit anybody, which is okay, I guess. But in the end, then some guys are just not going to get the right amount of games either. They're just not.
Right, and I think that, at some point, there also has to be some consequences for taking the penalties because the team,
Yeah,
again, still leads the league in penalty minutes.
yeah,
They're getting better, overall in terms of the ratio of penalties drawn versus penalties taken, but it's still not there yet, and, obviously, these game misconducts are not helping either, but, in terms of the power play to power or to penalty kill ratio, it's slightly better than it has been, like, I would say over the last 5 or 6 games, but, it's just still an issue that is happening here. But,
yeah.
just,
It is.
uh, wanna end on a good note with J.R. Avon
Mhm.
again, just because I'm so pleased with his progress. Scored in back-to-back games. One of his goals was just a beautiful shot, and I just love watching the kid play, I gotta say.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's having a nice rookie year. 7 goals in 22 games is good. Uh, I think they're doing the right thing with him because I do think they realize he's a higher level talent than some of the other guys that they have there. And so that part makes sense. I mean, look, uh, Lycksell's the team leader with 13. We talk about Tuomaala, but he's got a lot of assists. He's got 8 goals. And then, right there, he's Avon's with there with Marody and otherwise. So um, that's really good. I mean, he's got more goals than Wade Allison. That's he's really served his role well, but he's getting a lot of playing time. There are a couple other guys. If they got more playing time, I think they would get more goals too. But
Yep,
we'll see what happens.
yep, I agree. We're gonna wrap up with the Phantoms and talk about our nemesis of the week coming up next. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. They've got killer deals on last minute tickets, and with their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting excited for all the fun you'll have. My favorite parts of the Game Time app is that it's great for getting notified about those last minute flash deals. Plus, you can get that all important view from your seat. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and sometimes even up to an hour after it starts. It is the place to find your last minute seats. Also, the tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube to subscribe. Just want to talk a little bit about goaltending for the Phantoms. We had Felix Sandstrom in for the first game on Thursday that they won in overtime, 23 saves on 25 shots. Parker Gahagan played the game on Friday, and he had 20 saves on 24 shots. And I will say Gahagan did not look great in that game. I think there was a couple of goals that he should have had. And of course, in the shootout, man, it just felt like it was parallel worlds, with the Flyers game and the Phantoms game with
Yeah,
losing in the shootout. But like, I think Sandstrom would have done better in the shootout,
yeah.
to be honest. But, I think when you look at shots against overall, that bodes well for the Phantoms defensively, only allowing 24 or 25 shots in those two games. But, I do think that Sandstrom is looking pretty good down there. And I feel really comfortable, obviously, about him as a call up option.
Look, I hope good things for him. I just don't think he's long for the Flyers organization. That's my whole thing. I think he's a pretty good goalie, and I think he could be a definite backup in the NHL. And I think he will be. I just
Yeah.
don't think it's going to be with the Flyers.
Yeah, they just have to figure out a way to make it work with a deal sometime so that they can at least get something back for him. But looking ahead, the first Phantoms game this week is tomorrow, facing Utica. Then on Saturday and Sunday, the Phantoms are also at home and facing Hershey and the aforementioned Charlotte Checkers, who we just saw for that back to back. The Phantoms also do this world's largest puck drop thing for New Year's Eve, which is really fun.
I don't
So
even know about that.
yeah, they do instead of the ball dropping in Times Square,
Okay,
it's a giant puck and it's really huge, and I think they got a Guinness World Record for it or something
that's
last year.
cool.
So,
Yeah, it's always
yeah,
good to set the Guinness World Record.
yeah,
That's a big thing.
yes, super fun stuff there.
So here's
So,
my nemesis.
well, I didn't even get to my
Oh, I
nemesis,
thought you
but
did. I thought you did so much talking. I thought you did.
shows how much you were paying attention. All
Sorry,
right.
I was formulating mine.
That's fine. You wanna give yours first for a
I'll give
change?
you
You
mine first.
can.
We're gonna change it up.
Okay.
The NHL has a series going on Amazon Prime called The Chosen One, and it's about Alexander Daig, who played for the Ottawa Senators. We all remember him.
Yeah, yeah.
Top pick. Uh, I get why people would say, "Hey, he didn't live up to his ability at 137 points in juniors," but he still ended up with 137 goals and 327 points. And so I understand that some people, because he went first, want to call him a bust. Like, I'm not going to watch this thing, and I'm not saying they're going to call him a bust, but I'm pretty sure they're gonna. They're gonna. But I'm also going to say he didn't have a horrible career. He just didn't have a star-studded career. Like look, they're going to probably talk about him and Pam Anderson because they went out for a while. Maybe they're going to
Oh,
go,
right.
yeah,
They
they're going
did.
to they're going to go that route maybe. Say what you want, though, he wasn't an awful hockey player, and so there were worse first overall picks than Alexander Daig, and I don't know. When I saw that, I was just like, I think too many people call him a bust. Where I think it's like, hey, yeah, he was very disappointing for a first overall, but like I said, he still had 327 points in the NHL, which isn't horrible, and I'm sure there's first round picks that have had fewer. I know there
Yeah,
are
I believe it.
first overall.
All right. Well, my nemesis of the week is Flyers related. Last week, I talked about the deja vu doldrums that the Flyers were in, facing the Preds and the Devils and Red Wings again so close. This week, it's about this reset and the road trip coming up. In terms of the loss to Nashville and that heartbreaking comeback that was not to be against Detroit, like then you have a few days off to sit and stew about both of those games. How do you reset going into this road trip? And you're going to face a lot of tough teams out west. And, how do you change your mindset? And I think, that is a big challenge for the Flyers to face this week as they go up against Vancouver and the Kraken and the Flames, and then later the Oilers. And, we have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about that very road trip on tomorrow's show, as well as your mailbag. So make sure you get your questions in via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. I am Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTS OLOGY.
Yeah, have a great day, everyone.